So as the summer approaches and WWDC is going to be happening in June, there's a bunch of iOS 19 leaks as well as some hardware leaks on the iPhone front that I think are shaping up to be a nice big overhaul and something that's going to make you feel like you're actually owning a different device versus the last few years that have felt like you kind of just have the same thing over and over again. So let's talk about iOS 19 because there's a lot to like and a lot to go over. Let's get into it. But now before we continue, if you do enjoy videos like this one, definitely consider subscribing down below because it helps motivate us to make more videos like this one. But now we discussed about 2 weeks ago that there was a big leak with iOS 19, and it looks like iOS 19 is going to be adopting a lot of visual cues and UI elements from visionOS. So that glassy, transparent look, more rounded off icons, things kind of seem to be floating in a 3D plane versus being a more 2D look, and all that is still true, but we have some more nuanced details that I want to go over that were highlighted in the FPT video by John Prosser. So let's start off with the home screen and its icons specifically. So of course, like I keep mentioning, we're going to get some sort of visionOS inspired UI look. So when you think about especially first-party widgets, everything's going to be kind of glassy and transparent and have kind of this slight reflection to it to, again, mimic the idea that we are looking at a 3D field versus the more traditional look that we've had with the home screen. But when it comes to the icons, there's 2 different variations, but what is for certain, according to all these leaks, is that gone is going to be the real squared look of the current icons of iOS, and we're going to get closer to a circular look. Now, it remains yet to be seen if we're going to go with a perfect circle, or if they're going to continue to use that kind of squircle design that we have, which is a much bigger circular radius of going up to 30 degrees, making it look mostly circular, but with a little bit of a squared off look still. I still think we're going to go with a full circular look to give you a complete redesign, but still kind of mimicking the design language of visionOS, so it's not totally foreign and totally unfamiliar, so people will be used to it. I know there aren't a lot of visionOS users or people that have experienced visionOS, but still from a design language and from a comparability standpoint, at least it's going to be very similar to what Apple's already doing, so porting it over from visionOS to iOS should be relatively simple. Some other visual UI elements that should be added is going to be this kind of shimmery look to those glass-like kind of backgrounds in the glass UI. So you might have noticed that with Apple, with its gyroscope and being able to sense movement on the iPhone, they actually introduced a few different things in accessibility, like reduced motion, to kind of help people when it comes to using their phone when they are moving, whether it's in a car or an airplane, a bus, whatever the case may be. So we know that the iPhone has the ability to react based on movement, and what's nice about this is that now there's going to be translated into the new UI, and I'm sure you can turn this off and on depending on what your situation is, but I'm sure that out of the box by default, let's say if you do move your phone a little bit, it's going to shimmer in the correct orientation with physics-based movements to give you that feel that this is actually real as opposed to just a UI element. I think this is going to go across the entire OS, giving us this kind of reactionary visionOS look, which is going to be very cool to see. Some of the things that we saw is that in Control Center and in the settings menus, and whenever you have these kind of on-off toggles that we've been very familiar with, they're going to be a lot more pill-shaped. So they're going to be more elongated, and instead of being a circular switch, it's going to be more of a rectangular or rounded off rectangle switch that's going to be a little bit more elongated, like I mentioned earlier. Again, mostly UI elements, nothing's going to change functionally, it'll just look a little bit different and make you feel like you have a different device. Another thing Apple's going to be doing from a UI element perspective, but also a little bit of a functionality perspective is, if you guys remember back in the iPhone 6 and I believe the iPhone 7 days, remember 3D Touch, one of the best things to ever happen to Apple and iOS that for some reason Apple removed, but they are kind of bringing that idea back a little bit. Right now, if you long press on certain applications, it'll actually pop up a nice little menu, and iOS 19 will hold on to that, but giving us a more glass-like design and add a little bit more functionality into those menus, because you'll be able to kind of almost pull up part of the application, almost like an app clip, but be able to interact with it directly from your dock or your home screen without having to dive directly into the application, which is a nice little add-on. And then Apple's going to be completely redesigning the tab view. We've already seen some inkling in some different applications in iOS 18 of what this tab view can look like and being able to customize it. For example, in the Apple TV application on the iPad, you can decide to have the sidebar view or that new tab view on the top, which again is going to adopt this kind of pill-like cutout, and it's going to be a floating design. So it'll still be persistent, but it won't be attached to any bezels or any corners or anything like that. It'll actually be a floating design that sits on top of whatever you're viewing, similar to where the dynamic island is, but we're now going to have a tab view for a lot of first-party and eventually third-party applications. And if you remember with iOS 17, Apple actually changed where the URL bar was in Safari, and they moved it down by default. Now you can actually change this and move it back up, which is what I did because I kind of just liked how it looked previously and it reminds me of using it on the iPad or on Mac. But now that URL bar is going to be an inference or a foreshadow into the rest of the UI. So all search menu options and things of that nature are going to be much more reachable and easy to use because they'll be at the bottom of most applications. The example they used in the FPT video was that the search bar actually shows up in the Messages app on the bottom as opposed to on the top, which will make it much easier to actually get quick access to that instead of using some kind of finger gymnastics to kind of reach up and find the search bar. So that's always great to see. And then when it comes to the Settings app and the overall app look, everything is going to change visually but functionally remain the same, but also keep a sense of familiarity. So everything is going to remain kind of where it is. Nothing's going to really change. It's just going to look a little bit different to avoid any confusion and avoid any learning curve. Again, like I mentioned in the very beginning of the video, most of these phones have remained exactly the same. And even if you went from an iPhone 12 to an iPhone 16, the actual experience was basically identical. And after a day or two of you getting used to the form factor changing a little bit, then you're going to feel like you have the same exact phone. And that's obviously by design to make it familiar. And although Apple is changing the UI and the look and the feel of iOS 19, it's still going to be very familiar and familiar enough where you won't feel confused if you are coming from an older model, an older iOS, or if you're somebody that hasn't upgraded in a while. Because the idea here is to be able to pick it up and easily use it, where it looks different enough where it feels new, but familiar enough where it's very easy to use. And then lastly, the one big feature that Jon Prosser did show off is that only for the Pro iPhone, so the 17 Pro and the 17 Pro Max, you'll be able to use both cameras in the actual camera application. I believe there's some third-party apps right now that allow this to happen to a certain extent. Well, it will record using all 4 cameras, including the selfie camera, but now by default in the camera application, you'll be able to not only use your main sensor on the rear, but then also use the front sensor for the selfie camera to be able to record both simultaneously if you have maybe some voiceover you want to do or something that you want to show off. Or again, we now live in a world where that kind of content is something that people like to see. They like to see the large content in the background with somebody talking to you in the bottom right or bottom left-hand corner. And now Apple will be able to do that with the camera app natively, which is a nice little touch. Now, I don't really know why it's only going to be exclusive to the Pro models, maybe give you a reason to get the Pro versus the non-Pro, but at the end of the day, this is something that has been able to be done by other phones and has been done with third-party applications, but now coming natively, and I'm sure the UI elements are going to be very pretty and very easy to use, knowing Apple. So again, the name of the game here is going to be Visual Overhaul, with functionality remaining relatively the same. Apple will add a few things here and there to make your life a little bit easier by reducing friction, like bringing the search bar to the bottom of most applications, using the tab view now, to make it just easier to get from point A to point B. But again, for me, the biggest thing here is what's Apple going to do with Apple Intelligence? There's still a few things missing with Apple Intelligence, and they are going to be the big things that people want, like in-app awareness, like contextual awareness, on-screen awareness, being able to have cross-app interactions by just using your voice. So hopefully Apple does double down on Apple Intelligence, because I do see the value of AI and ChatGPT, because I use it pretty often now in my workflow, whether it is for personal or for work. So bringing that over and porting it over to iOS, making it native, reducing any and all friction should be the key moving forward with iOS 19. And I really hope that Apple does something with it, because again, they promised this with the iPhone 16 and with iOS 18, and Apple's literally getting sued right now because of the fact that they haven't brought it out, and it was almost like false marketing. But let's see what they do with iOS 19. Let me know in the comment down below what you think. Are you excited for iOS 19? Are you excited for the new iPhone 17 and the 17 lineup? Do you think it's going to be enough to entice people to upgrade? Do you think it's going to be enough of a visual and functional overhaul to really make people happy with iOS 19? And what do you think they're going to do with Apple Intelligence moving forward? All things I want to discuss down below. But if you made it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end. And if you want to watch more videos like this one, definitely check out one of these videos right here. And until next time, I'm Fernando. Peace, everybody. Shout out Jon Prosser for posting our video in his video. A little video inception there.